This week I learned I might need to lighten my load a little bit in May because I might be missing in action. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back for the final weekly update for the month of March. Guys, it's been an exciting month. Lots of things to talk about that's been going on around the channel, around the week. Lots of different things, I think, than usual to talk about because there's a lot of things in entertainment that have kind of been very much newsworthy and ready to talk about. But, guys, we always start with the books here. That begins with what am I reading? I didn't quite finish A Storm of Swords. Pretty close. And guys, this book is it's a lot. Look, it's an amazing book. It's incredible. It's an experience. There's no dull moments in it. It's still almost 1,000 pages on hardcover, so it's quite a beast to get through. And since it's a reread, I'm not really worried about, are you not going to finish it in the month of March? You know, it's nothing like that. Sure, I'm goal-oriented, but I'm not, like, obsessed about it. To the point to where, okay, I can let that go into April while I'm starting some other things. And other things I did begin a day early, guys. I told you I was in that Keymark Discord readathon. Well, one thing about that is they do not let you count rereads. So I said I have no problem going ahead and starting Iron Gold a day early. I did like the first 5 chapters, which if you've read any Red Rising books, you know that a chapter in here is like 6 or 7 pages. So not even 40 pages into it. But I am excited to be getting into this because I'm going to be talking about the sequels a little bit extra here pretty soon because I got thoughts on because people have so many preconceived notions about the sequels. Either they've heard something or they've just decided they didn't want to keep going with the series. And again, I always say read what makes you happy, but I do plan on putting a video together rather soon. Kind of like I did with the first Lost Standalones, where I'm just going to present all the information, and you can decide. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in continuing with? Because I do think there's a lot going on here. Right away, the beginning of this book is just so different because while these books have always been just breakneck speed in its pacing, this one really does stop, take a breath, let you remember, okay, here's where the last book ended. Well, here's what's been going on the last decade, because this is a decade further in the timeline. And our characters are a little weary, and he tells you why. And it's very, very interesting. And I think that he really does dive in deep into the politics in this book. The in-world politics are really, really good. And it's very encouraging to I want you to be encouraged, rather, by that than saying, like, that doesn't sound like what I read Red Rising for. It's worth it, trust me. It's something I feel like was missing from those first books. It puts a little Song of Ice and Fire into here that I think that it needed. And I'm very excited to continue because I had a great time with Iron Gold and Dark Age. About as great a time as you can have with books that have content as a little dark as those two have. But I can't wait to get further into it because I'm just very excited to continue building this universe. And I know that the further I get in this, the closer we are to a new Red Rising book, which I've been waiting for 4 damn years now. But that leaves me, guys, what am I going to read? Well, obviously, I'm going to be working on Iron Gold. That's going to probably, I usually snap through a Red Rising book in about 2 or 3 days. This thing I learned about the sequels, they are a little beefier. They are a little chunkier. My goal is to kind of finish that one this week. Maybe continue to work on Storm of Swords and see if I've got any time left rather than the week. After that, guys, I told you last week, I've got into the last, which is for the Keymark read-along or readathon. That is my chonker because that is 800 pages. So, I think that's going to keep me kind of busy for the next week. I think I'm safe in saying I won't get past this point in the next week. But another thing for the readathon is we'll be continuing, my son and I, with the Percy Jackson series. It's going to be the last book in the series. This is the last Olympian, it's the last book in the Percy Jackson and Olympian series. As you probably know, Rick Riordan's kept that universe going for 25 years now, and I think he's actually putting out a new Percy Jackson book this year. Because there's going to be I'm sure they think there's going to be a lot of new interest with the Disney Plus version that will be coming out soon, which my son is extremely excited about. Every time now we're talking about it, it's like, I hope they do that right on the show. I hope they do that right on the show. I was like, man, you sound like me when I was talking about Game of Thrones coming out. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, you'll see. So I think it's going to be a great learning lesson for him. if I'm going off of Disney Plus's track record. You remember that Artemis Fowl adaptation? How'd that go? Anyhow, hope for the best, expect the worst. That's always the way we do it. But I'm excited to get back to that with him. Like I said, I thought the last Percy Jackson book was the best one yet. And he's got all kinds of theories. And having to wait here until the first, it's been a little bit of a struggle, but he's enjoyed us staying up late to play Zelda every night. That's kind of been the way to ease things in. But that's really all I got going on for this week on what I plan to read. But it's content I'm very, very excited for, because finished up my favorite fantasy book of all time, starting on these sequel series that I think is just different enough, but still familiar in the Red Rising saga that makes them a lot of fun. And then the conclusion of The Last War by Mike Shackle. It's just stuff I'm really, really excited for. So it's going to be a great month. I'm very excited to get it going. But how about wrapping up this last month? What is I doing this week on the channel? Well, I did preview April with my 2023 TBR. Like I said, I'm very excited about the content coming in April that I've got to read. I love some of the new things I've got on that list. There are some new things because Philip and I are taking a 2-month hiatus on the Realm of the Elderlings. While he promotes The Way of Edan, we are going to be adding some new things to my TBR. And one of them is Philip's book. But I put another new series on there that I'm very, very excited to begin, because I've heard so many great, great things about it. So the whole thing with the TBR videos, you guys wanted me to start doing those monthly, and you seem to enjoy the way that I've been doing those. So I'm excited to keep doing it that way. I think that gives you a lot more, because there is sometimes, it'll be like, okay, I'm planning a quarter ahead of the time. You guys know things can change in 3 months, and so this gives me more of an opportunity of, okay, like I said, me and Philip decided to change directions here towards the end of the month. That way I'd go back and be like, I got to make an amendment to that little TBR video I made back in January. So doing it monthly has been a lot of fun for me. So I'm glad that you guys prefer it that way, because I'm going to continue to do it that way. And I'm going to continue to talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, guys, because we did decide to bring back Throne Zone for an episode. Now, if you don't know, Throne Zone is basically our Game of Thrones video podcast. We decided, look, me and my old podcast host used to do this after every new episode of Game of Thrones, as we would talk about it. And we'd always said if he decided to read the books, we would talk about the books. Well, he never read the books, and long story short, that channel slowly died, and this one was created. So when we started doing House of the Dragon Season 1 after show, me, Scott, and Madison, and we had a lot of fun with it, and we were like, man, we really got to wait 2 years before we can get together again. I was like, well, I miss my co-hosts too much. So we said, how about, since we're all rereading A Song of Ice and Fire, we just do some spoiler talks, because I'm doing those standard Game of Thrones reviews or Song of Ice and Fire reviews. Sometimes it's hard not to call it Game of Thrones. It just became a pop culture thing in that way. So I decided, hey, let's go ahead and have some spoiler talks about these books. So we did the one for A Game of Thrones. It was a ton of fun. It's one of those things where I'm like, look, I feel like it was so much gushing that I don't know that we really got to talk about everything we want, but you do these live. That's going to happen sometimes. We don't really go off of a format or anything. I jotted down the POV characters' names, and we just talked about them. And that's just, it's kind of like our format. So it might not be the cleanest, and we're not really going through the narrative as it happens in the book. But I think we talk about all of the big moments in that book. And, when you don't have to worry about, I don't want to spoil that for anybody, it's always a lot of fun. And we had a lot of actual viewers that night that were making a lot of comments. So I'm glad that people are actually finally getting past how the show ended, and they're getting interested in the books. They're reading them for the first time, or they're revisiting them and remembering, wow, these books really do just bang. They're just amazing. They're really just awesome books. And we should be doing a Clash of Kings here rather soon, because like I said, me and Scott are finishing up A Storm of Swords. He might have actually finished it since we talked, and Madison already finished A Storm of Swords. So we've got those on tap. There are other channels doing a bunch of that stuff. I don't want to kind of cross with them. I want to make sure I'm giving them the space that they need to do that. They don't feel like I'm trying to steal their thunder or anything. But we've got time before House of the Dragon Season 2, so we'll be doing these spoiler talks slowly but surely, and I'm excited to do it. I'm glad that you guys, the feedback's been really good. You guys did enjoy it, and I am happy, because there are few things I love to talk about as much as the world that George created, and I do love. And then I did my Morningstar review. This was my last of my spoiler-free reviews for the original trilogy, and it's one of those things where sequels, the reviews, people, it's not as much interest to them, and that's fine. These are something that I said I wanted to do. The Red Rising, the Stephen King stuff, is a passion project on my channel. I'm always going to continue to do that, because I'm going to do spoiler reviews spoiler talks with HowlerPod, and then spoiler-free reviews with just myself. And yeah, I love doing it. It's a lot of fun for me to talk about why these books are great. It gets a little hard to do these without talking about spoilers, but at this point, I feel like I perfected it. I feel like I have the whole spoiler-free review, but actually still talking about something. There's a little bit of a fine line between that, and I feel like I found it. I feel like I talked about enough in there, but there was a couple times I had to make some cuts in that video because I was like, no, you just blurted out the identity of a character that may have died in book number 2, so things like that always will come up, but we won't have to worry about that next week. And let's go ahead and talk about next week plans, guys, because I will be doing my spoiler talk with HowlerPod for Morningstar, and there we won't have to worry about anything, and we can kind of talk and gush and complain and rant. I know that there are some things that Aaron wants to rant about on this episode, and I can't wait. And then towards the end, we're going to kind of basically say, hey, don't be a pixie. Read the sequels, and we're going to kind of discuss why. And I'm excited to do that anytime I get a chance to talk to Ben and Aaron about the Red Rising saga. It's a great time. So doing spoiler talks in back-to-back weeks for 2 of my favorite series, obviously. Hashtag blessed, am I right? So I'm excited to do it, and we'll be doing that. One I'm not as excited to do just because I don't think it'll go over very well. And I'm going to be talking about the Tawny Man trilogy. Now, I decided to stop doing the Robin Hobb books as individual reviews and review them as the little sub-series. So this one will be for the Tawny Man trilogy. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of things I liked about it. Quite a few things I did not. And you guys know me, I'm never going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you how I felt about it. And I'm going to explain why some of those things did not work for me. And I know that the Tawny Man is a trilogy that a lot of Hobb fans say is their favorite. So it's one of those, I think it might be, I don't want to say controversial, because again, it's just my opinion, and who am I? I'm just a guy with Wi-Fi, right? But I do know that there are some people that were just stunned that I wasn't blown away with Fool's Fate like they were. And I'm going to kind of explain why. But I hope you guys can understand that all my criticism, obviously, is always constructive. I can admit when things are a me thing, and it's not a book problem. And I think that'll come across in that video. But I'm excited to do it before I do get into the Dragon books here with Philip starting in June. We'll be going back to those. And then I'll be wrapping up the month of March talking about my book of the month. If you guys watch these weekly updates, I think you can decipher what my book of the month will be, because I don't count rereads. And I just say listen to my feedback, and I think you can probably figure this one out. But I always have a lot of fun doing that, because it's always fun to see what you guys are really interested in, what you guys are jiving with that month. What are you really digging into as far as my content goes, and as far as, what you guys want to hear me talk about. That's kind of how I gauge interest, is stuff like that. Is, hey, if you guys are really, really interested in this, I'll do more of it. If you guys aren't so much interested in this, maybe I'll ease off a little bit on it. Unless, like I said, it's a passion project. So that's kind of a fun thing for me to do a wrap up and look at everything that worked, some things that didn't. And, kind of helps me look forward to what I'm going to be doing the next month. But that's all I got really for books, guys. There are a couple of TV and movie talk things I want to talk about before I go. House of the Dragon Season 2 has been reduced to 8 episodes. Now, I am waiting to hear feedback about this, because I do remember very much George R. R. Martin on Not a Blog saying it was very, very imperative that they had 4 seasons of 10 episodes to tell this entire story. And here we go in Season 2. After Season 1 was a pretty big success. I know it's like House of Dragon's in that phase right now. What people do is where it was really good. It was received really, really well. But over time, people start talking themselves out of liking it. You see this a lot with entertainment now. People will talk themselves out like, well, actually, it had a lot of problems. Actually, you know what? It actually wasn't that good. We see that now with Game of Thrones about apparently it wasn't good after Season 4. And it's like, okay. I remember you guys obsessed up until the premiere of Season 8. Anyhow, that's that could be a rant video, I swear, at this point. But with this, I am like, I'm going to wait and see some feedback. Because, like I said, this was a very big success. I know people are really, really excited about The Last of Us right now. House of Dragon was bigger for them. It did get more viewers. Here's the deal. If this is a decision that Ryan Condal made because of the story, if he feels like he can tell the story he wants to tell, I'm thinking what this is he knows where he wants this season to start, and he knows what he wants this season to end on, the cliffhanger he wants it to end on. And I think he might have just said, it's too hard for me to push that 2 more episodes down the line. That's what I'm thinking. That's the positive side of me. The negative side of me is like there's a lot of merger and acquisition stuff going on with all these companies right now, and HBO Discovery, all that stuff is. I'm like, is this a budget thing? Because I think that would be detrimental if this is a budget thing. If this is one of your biggest shows, but it is an expensive show, and you're cutting it down 2 episodes because of budget, that's very, very concerning, And I would hope they're not doing that, because I feel like regardless of if people were trying to talk themselves out of liking it now or not, what you got to say is this has eased the blow. This has made up a little bit for how they handled the ending of Game of Thrones, to where people are like, okay, I'm ready to love again. And if you go in there and you start tinkering and you start messing with stuff, you start cutting corners, you risk losing all those people you just got back. So I hope they're careful. I hope they're very, very careful with this. Personally, what I think this is, you can still have 10 hours of television and 8 episodes, so maybe some of the episodes might be longer, but again, as long as Ryan is telling the story he wants to tell, and hey, who knows, maybe season 3 has 11 episodes and season 4 has 12 episodes, who cares? In the end, as long as he's telling the story he wants to tell, I'm fine with it. I'm just hoping they aren't coming to Ryan Condal and George R. R. Martin and saying, yeah, you need to cut this down by 2 episodes. You need to cut out 2 episodes worth of story because we're only paying for 8 episodes. That's what I'm hoping doesn't happen. But hope for the best. Expect the worst, like I always say, guys. But I'm excited for House of Dragon Season 2 when it does happen. And I'm hoping that they continue to let Ryan, in collaboration with George, make the series that they want to make. Because as a fan, I was very, very pleased with season number 1. Something else on HBO is I felt like I needed kind of a funny show. I don't have like a funny show anymore since The Office left Netflix and Friends left Netflix. I don't really have like a show. Parks and Rec isn't on there anymore. So it's like I don't have a show that I just watch just to laugh. And so I started looking around at HBO Max, and I realized, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. Huge. But I never watched a single episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Now, Curb Your Enthusiasm isn't exactly like the spin-off or the sequel to Seinfeld, but Larry David was a very huge part of making Seinfeld a success. And so Curb Your Enthusiasm has always been kind of like the spiritual successor to Seinfeld. So I finally went ahead and watched it. And guys, it was 15 seconds in the first episode. I was laughing so hard I was almost crying. And I said, okay, I feel like this is something I should not have waited. And the best thing about Curb Your Enthusiasm now is it first came out. I mean, it's 20-something years old now. And that's before comedians were scared to do anything and risk of getting in trouble for being offensive, So it's very, very not unoffensive, I guess you say. I mean, I love that. I'm here for that. I think with comedy, I don't take it seriously. You're not supposed to. So I feel like we have to be able to laugh at ourselves. And I think that Larry pokes fun at himself more than just about anybody in that series. I feel like it's a good mix of Seinfeld, but maybe like with Louis. You remember that show Louis that was on FX with Louis C.K., where it's just like a lot of uncomfortable situations and making yourself the butt of the jokes, a lot of self-deprecating humor. But I'm almost done with season 1. But yeah, it's very, very funny, guys. And I know that some people, some younger viewers were like, I just don't understand what your generation got out of Seinfeld. Really, with me, it's just like finding the absurdity in the minutiae of everyday daily life. And that's what I've always loved about Seinfeld, is, called the show about nothing. That's why I named Talk About Nothing what I did. Don't always have to have a plot for it to be entertaining, I don't think. And I watched these Curb Your Enthusiasm episodes. I'm like, this doesn't have a plot. Like, there's one where he's just complaining about the rules at a doctor's office, about how soon you get in for your appointment. I've had that discussion before, so these are things that click with me. So I'm very excited to continue with that. I'm not going to talk about Succession, guys, because I haven't watched the premiere yet, but I'm excited to get to it. But I should mention the John Wick 4 box office roughly $138 million opening weekend. It's the highest for a rated R movie since The Virus That Shall Not Be Named. So that's really, really encouraging. I just got to say, I'm proud of Keanu, man, because I don't think that there's a nicer, more genuine guy in the business than him. And I felt like, besides The Matrix, it felt like a lot of his career, people just made like a punchline out of, whoa, and all that stuff. And I think now people take him seriously as maybe the number 1 action star in the business right now. I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking who's better. Stallone's finally pretty much hanging up the gloves, now that he wasn't in Creed 3. Arnold? Arnold finally is like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be doing movies like this anymore. So they aren't making any more expendable movies, I don't think. What, are you really going to count Vin Diesel? I mean, I don't know. Tom Cruise and I think Keanu might feel like the last 2 action stars going right now. And I'm happy for him. I didn't get to see it yet. I'm one of those bad parents who's showing my kids or my kid, my oldest. I'm showing my oldest the John Wick movies. We only watched the first 2, or watched 3, but again, almost 3 hours. I mean, besides Avatar, I broke the rule for that, but I usually won't take my kids to a movie that long because they have no interest in watching something for that long. But, you know, my oldest was just all over Avatar, so he wanted to see that, and I'm glad we did. I'm glad we saw that in the theaters. But with this, I'll wait for video. But I am going to be taking them to see Super Mario here in a couple of weeks. I think that's a little more perfect for them. But I got to talk some gaming talk before I go, guys, because if you don't know, my favorite franchise in gaming is The Legend of Zelda. And they did do a gameplay reveal of 10 minutes for Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I've heard a lot of complaints about a few things. The performance and the look. Now, look, here's the deal with that. With me, Zelda is a national holiday in my house, no matter what game it is. If it's on a console, I'm not real big into the handheld games, although there are a couple good ones. But I'm saying, this makes our household stop. Everyone in the house plays Zelda. So it's one of those things where this is coming out. I don't care if it's coming out on the GameCube. I'm going to play it. So I've always had that gripe about Nintendo, about how they're innovative in what they do with like coming up with new gimmicks for their systems. But as far as graphics and capability, they're fine being 2 generations behind everyone else. They're fine with that because they know that their first-party IPs are untouchable. No one can beat them. So I get why that bothers people, but it doesn't bother me. Look, we're going to be playing it on Switch. I'm fine with it. It looks fine to me. It doesn't look like it's juddery or, you know, it drops down to like 3 frames per second or nothing. I'm not the big technical guy like that, to where as long as it doesn't have slowdown, it doesn't bother me. To me, with Zelda, it's always about the gameplay, and the gameplay looks amazing. And the thing with the new Zelda game every time is, what new abilities are they going to add to it? And they showed off 4 new abilities, and some of them look really, really cool. The first one's called Fuse, and one of the big things about Breath of the Wild that some people didn't like was how quick the weapons broke. Well, this gives you, that still happens in this game, but what they've done is they've done this idea where you can fuse any item with another item that you see on the screen. In the video, he shows, he picks up a tree branch, he hits an enemy with it 3 times, it shatters. But he takes the tree branch and uses this new ability called Fuse, and he fuses it with a boulder, and all of a sudden, wow, he hits this enemy like 8 times and it don't break. And I'm like, wow, so you basically can make a makeshift warhammer on the fly. That's amazing. But it's not just that, you can do it with just about anything. Later in the video, he's showing he takes an arrow and he puts a Keese eyeball on it, and it turns the arrow into like a heat-seeking missile. I never am able to hit anything that's flying in a Zelda game, so that's really, really awesome. So, wow, I can craft my own frost and bomb missiles now instead of overpaying a vendor for it? Great, great. I love this idea. I don't have to grind for a really amazing weapon that's going to break in 3 hits. Cool. That's kick-ass. I like this. So Fuse is awesome. Ascend is one where anything that has a ceiling, you can pop through it now. That's going to make climbing mountains a lot easier. So that's a really neat idea. You know what? You can no longer put Link in a gel cell. You can just right through the ceiling. Sounds really cool. So I wonder if that one's not making it a little too OP. But I feel like with Zelda, they always think ahead of that, and they'll have a lot of temples where it's a damaged temple and the roof's been collapsed or something, I think, so you can't just cheat like crazy. Recall is almost like a time rewind that they had in Breath of the Wild, but it's a little different. It's like if you see like a falling object, you can go jump on it and press recall, and it'll take it back to where it fell from. So that's pretty neat. That's how you get up to those Sky Islands. And then Ultra Hand, not the best name, but an amazing ability, because you can basically craft vehicles now. It shows in the video he crafts a boat. It shows that he's crafted a car. He's crafted an airship. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to craft your own, makeshift house if you want to do that. So guys, it just looks like to me that May is going to be a month of, like I said, missing in action, because in case you don't know, we didn't next gen yet. We still have Xbox One, PS4. We didn't feel like it was worth upgrading to the new consoles because there was no must-buy game that wasn't available on those 2 systems yet. So we are waiting on Hogwarts Legacy, and it got pushed until May the 5th. And this comes out May the 12th. So, yeah, the month of May is going to be one of those where, like, reading videos, I don't know about all that. I got gaming to do. So it's going to be a fun time. Look, I'm not terribly much of a gamer to the point where it can take over my life anymore, unless it's Zelda. Zelda always would take over my life. It's been like that since I was 8 years old, and it's dangerous to go alone. Take this with you. I've always been a Zelda honk, and I'm very, very excited for this, as well as Hogwarts Legacy. So it's going to be a lot of a lot of gaming, and I can't wait for it. But guys, that was my week. What's your week looking like? Why don't you drop in the comments? Let me know what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're playing, and I will talk to you there.